South Africa's silent diplomacy towards Zimbabwean politics. South Africa often remains silent on political issues in Zimbabwe and mostly supports the governance that violates human rights. In the 2007 political crisis, Thabo Mbeki mediated the formation of a unity government between MDC and ZANU-PF following a landslide victory by the former, instead of being honest and calling Mugabe to order and abdicating the throne. The 2002 presidential elections in Zimbabwe were full of intimidation, and the Youth League of ZANU-PF was militarized as they ravaged the villages with terror. If you were suspected of supporting the opposition, you would be victimized. Homes were burnt, crops were destroyed, mainly in the rural areas like Motoko, Kokwe, Karoe, and a lot more. Observers were sent from South Africa, that is, Judge Sisi Kampepe and Dikang Moseneke, who mostly concluded that the elections were legitimate at face value. Their real report was not published until 2014, when they were sued for its publishing, only to realize that there was political intimidation and there were not free and fair elections, something that was supposed to be reported during the electoral phase. 2 years later, during the 2005 parliamentaries, Labour Minister Membathisi Mdladlana was part of the observers, and when every other observer was concerned about the fairness of the election, they turned a blind eye. The South Africa Energy Minister Ngcoka commended Zimbabwe on peaceful and transparent elections that were well managed, and commented on political tolerance as well as electoral maturity. In 2019, ANC, which had been using silent diplomacy in Zimbabwe, complained about political and economic crisis in their neighboring countries. They in turn complained about immigrants that torment their country and cause a rise in social issues and unemployment rate, as the local businesses are employing foreign nationals due to their cheap wages. The foreigners issue affected ANC election results with a decline of 8% votes and less popularity. Why would South Africa complain about immigration, since they turned a blind eye to their revolutionary counterparts violating the electoral process and chose to support them? If the citizens of the neighboring country cannot change the status quo, they simply rush to the supporting stepfather next door. The South African government supports the black capitalists in the country next door, then blames the citizens for leaving that country. Motsoaledi has since blamed Mnangagwa's regime on addressing, or actually on not addressing, the migration issue. But where was he when they failed to address the stolen votes? The hidden foreign relations are beyond our understanding, as the presidents maintain their brotherhood and the general populace suffers from a lot of ills they fail to address. ZANU-PF has been pampered and treated gently by their neighbor. Hence, South Africa has their share in the downward spiral of the political crisis. The migration crisis is simply South Africa reaping what they sowed. Mbeki never looked beyond the unity government and how it would affect his own folk. It is widely believed that Thabo Mbeki and his SADC counterparts left the Harare regime to map its own demise, as they went ahead with the forceful land grab in the year 2000. Their reason for being quiet is either they see their own unaddressed land issue, or they didn't care at all. But South Africa's economy is intertwined with Zimbabwe's, thus there was need for intervention one way or another. Later, South Africa intermediated between Bretton Woods institutions and Zimbabwe as they sought for peaceful buying of white-owned land, plunging Zimbabwe into debt. All discussions that were made were public appearances, but their revolutionary spirit prevailed. During the land grab that followed, Bey was criticized by the opposition of his own country and was called to interfere in the human rights violation of the white farmers, which he watered down by saying all who criticized his silent policy were racially biased. I believe that his silent diplomacy was in view of what the citizens, who are mainly landless, were going to say and support communist opposition who wanted the land issue resolved. Get me correct, there's nothing wrong with redistributing land, but the grab was wrong and Pretoria could have stopped it, sanctioned or otherwise. The issue was one of the major root of all Zimbabwe's problem, despite corruption and leadership ideological bankruptcy. Fast forward to 2017, we saw the dawn of a new era in Zimbabwe, which came as a coup. Zuma sent Special Envoy Minister of Defense Ngawula and Minister of State Security Bongani Bongo to meet Mugabe and the defense forces to ensure his safety. As well, he called for peace and security to prevail. The envoy was kept for a long time at the airport, then released later by the military, who saw no need to let them come to intervene because they failed when they were given a chance. They, however, watched as the coup unfolded. In 2020, there was also a crisis with the rule of law, as the leaders of the new Zimbabwe arrested members of the opposition, and Ramaphosa sent a special envoy again, and it failed to meet with the opposition leaders and came back to South Africa immediately after having achieved nothing. The Harare regime promised to be well behaved and to stop all the violence, only to fall back into the quagmire of delicacy. Pretoria and Harare regimes are bound by a blood pact and liberation movement solidarity. They see themselves as the makers of history. We are because of them. But now, our liberators have become our oppressors. South Africa needs to stop the silent diplomacy, and as the continent's most prominent democracy and regional leader and big brother, they need to call Zimbabwe to order, work on Zimbabwean democracy, condemn the bad, resolve the economy, making it easier for Zimbabweans to go back home, because the country's economic refugees are of great expense to South Africa.